It's working. Okay. Good evening to everyone. Thank you for coming out on this lovely Wednesday evening when it's getting too warm. No offense to anyone who's there on the computer watching from behind snow. We wish you could be here with us in person too. We are continuing in chapter 8. We went over 8:1 at the very end of last week's session. And as you could see, we were beginning the topic of inheritance, that when people die, there is a pattern for how their property is distributed. Last week, we looked at the basic pattern of who inherits from whom and all of that. This week, we're going to get a little bit more complicated as we look through many more cases. And chapter 9 is going to continue the conversation on inheritance. So I hope you enjoy it. Okay? All right. Do you mind starting us off? Excuse me.
Yes.
Too much tea.
This is the order of inheritance. If a man dies without leaving a son, you shall transfer his property to his daughter.
Right, that's the quote from the book of Numbers, 27:8.
The son precedes the daughter, and all the son's offspring precede the daughter.
Okay, so what is this trying to say? So you look at that verse. If a man dies without leaving a son, you shall transfer his property to his daughter. From that one verse, we can learn a couple things. We can learn that if he has a son, then the daughter doesn't inherit, right? If it's only no son equals daughter, then if there is a son, then the daughters don't get anything. Now, why is this? Remember, we want to make sure we understand this from a social, economic point of view. I don't want to sound like a Marxist, but we're talking about the means of production. Right? What was the primary force of wealth in the ancient world? Land, dirt, right? That was what mattered. Most people were not potters. Most people weren't shoemakers. Most people were farmers or maybe shepherds. That was the main form of wealth. The main job, right. But not just job, but that's what you owned, right? Because the idea of being a laborer, getting paid a salary to work on someone else's farm, that was kind of unusual. Usually that was a bad place to be. If you wanted to have your own farm, your own dirt, that's what you did to work, and that's how you survived. How did you get the dirt? Again, we're talking back at the very beginning of the Jewish people.
Inherited it.
You inherited it, but who got it first?
The man.
From?
The father.
From?
The tribe.
From?
When they came in, they divided up the land.
Ah, there we go. Okay, I had to get back to that point, right? From when they came in. We leave Egypt. We get to the land of Israel under Joshua, and Joshua conquers the land, and the people begin to settle in different portions as they are divided by Joshua, and that is the inheritance of that tribe. So you have the whole right, the whole nation, right? That's divided into tribes, and each tribe gets their own piece, but then that's divided into clans. Each clan gets a smaller piece, and then that's divided into individuals, right? And they get a tiny piece, right? So the whole nation, I guess I should do this. That's everybody's land for Am Yisrael, the nation of Israel. And then the tribe, Shimon, Dan, Yehuda, whatever, they're getting a big chunk of land. That's then divided up by the clans inside the tribe, and then individuals within the clan get a little piece. Now, because tribal affiliation goes through the 12 sons of Jacob, that means that your tribe is determined by your father. So the father has a piece of the land, right? You see how that all works up and down? So that's why it passes through the father. That means that if you're a girl, where are you going to get your land from?
Husband.
Your husband, right? Whoever you live with. Now, it can be your father if you never get married and you stay with your father's house, and you help out with everything that goes on a farm on his house, and you can live there and survive there, and that's fine, right? You are supported by his land. If you get married, you go to your husband's land. Now, your husband might be in the same clan, he might be in the same tribe, he might be in a different tribe. But if the girl had the land and she got married to a new tribe, what would happen?
She'd lose her inheritance.
Yeah. No, she wouldn't lose it. She would be, if we allowed it, she'd be taking from the tribe land and moving it to a different tribe. And that's not good. because then the balance between the tribes is broken. So during this time when the land was allocated by the tribes, by the clans, by the individuals, women didn't inherit because it would have caused the distribution of the means of production, of how people were able to provide for themselves, to easily become distorted as it drifted towards some of the bigger tribes in particular. And then the smaller tribes would be swallowed up. They would disappear. So having this system of inheritance in the Torah made a lot of sense. Batra.
No, I was going to say, if they, I thought if there was only one daughter and he was married to somebody outside the tribe, she had to forfeit her inheritance.
Yeah, we're getting back there. We're getting there, right? We got to get the basic structure first, and then we're going to get to the exception, right? We okay? Okay, so the basic structure is the boys inherit if there's a boy, right? If there is no boy, then the daughter can inherit, right? That's the second thing we learn from that verse. So if a man has only girls and he dies, then his land goes to them. But here's the question that Aaron was just bringing up. But wait a minute, if they've now inherited from their father, does that mean they can go to another tribe? And the answer is no. They can marry another member in the same tribe. So if you're from the tribe of Naphtali and your father dies and he only had girls, then you can marry another nice boy from Naphtali. And that way your father's land stays inside the land of Naphtali. Make sense? Okay, so that's the basic structure that we have here. Now, the second part that we have, or I guess the third part, forgetting my parts, the next section that we discussed was the son's offspring precedes the daughters. And for this, I'm going to need a family tree. So just bear with me as I try to draw this on the board. Let's see. Okay, so actually, well, we'll leave that there. Okay. We've got two lovely people, right? Two lovely people get married and they have children. We're just going to use 2 kids each generation because it makes life easier. Okay, actually, let's keep it consistent. So they have 2 sons, son and son, and those sons get married. And then they have children, right? This is how families grow. Yay. And boom. And excuse me. Well, we got to get this. We're going to need this chart in a minute. So that's why I'm trying to make it a little bit big now. Okay. Everyone got our families here, right? We have the first people, right? These are the great-grandparents of these guys, right? They have children, 2 boys. They get married. They have 2 children, a boy who gets married and then also a daughter, and 2 daughters over here. The boy who got married, he has 2 boys. Okay? Everyone with me? Now, imagine this guy dies. And, don't worry about the wife. We're just dealing with the guy. He dies. Where does his property go? To the son, right? Does not go to the daughter like we just talked about. But imagine this guy dies and his son is already dead, right? It goes to the kids, right? Because he already has children, it will go down to the grandchildren.
And what happens if the uncle died and has only girls? So also the son receives.
No. If the uncle dies and has only girls, what happens? It goes to the girls, right? That's the daughters of Slofachat. Yeah. Right? His portion will go to them. Now, we'll deal with more complicated issues in a second, but that's the basic structure that we have for inheritance, right? And the main part from that last sentence that we read that we just saw that was new is if he dies and his son is already dead, his money goes to the grandchildren because this progeny, the children of the child, inherit first.
So there is no way that the male part of the family receives the land from the other side.
Yes, there is a way, which we'll deal with eventually, but I can give you the short answer now, which is imagine he's all alone and he gets hit by a bull, right? His property would go around either to his father or to his brother, or it can go up to an uncle. It can go to other sides of the family, but he has to have no heirs at all. No one below him.
And no wife.
No, his wife doesn't inherit. Remember, that's what we talked about last week. The wife would never, even if he had a wife, if he gets run over by a bull, she still doesn't get anything from him. Now, we talked about this a few weeks ago, that she can still live off the estate and she can still be there until she gets remarried. They're not kicking her out into the street, but she doesn't get to own that property.
And what happens if he has a son or a daughter and they are mental incapacity?
Then there are guardians appointed to take care of the property on their behalf. It's still their property. Well, it's still the boy's property, and the girl is allowed to live off the estate.
Yeah, but until when? Because it will be forever. Mental incapacity is forever.
If they need to be taken care of forever, then they need to be taken care of forever. But the money would go from that estate. It's still their property. You can't say, oh, sorry, you don't deserve this because you're mentally incapable. You can go die in the forest. We're going to take the property. It wouldn't work like that. Now, when those children, assuming that they weren't able to get married and weren't able to have their own children when they died, then it would come back up through the tree and be redistributed from the other members of the family.
Okay, so yes, there's other way that they will go to the other side.
As complicated and as frustrating as the inheritance laws are, one of the beautiful things that they remind us is everybody has a relative somewhere, right? It may not be easy to find them, but everyone is connected to everyone else eventually. Maybe you have to go back up the tree 10 generations and find another fork.
In charge of actually the relative.
The Beit Din ultimately, if for example, God forbid, we will talk about this in chapter 9, where you have like a house falling down and there are multiple people in the house, of who inherits when multiple people are being killed at the same time, or not quite the same time, then yes, the Beit Din has to sort out who are the proper heirs for this property. Yes, not the fun part of being a rabbi.
So that means that in order to the Beit Din to discover, maybe the Beit Din, one of the judges, they need to travel around the country, meaning that city or that town, right, or whatever, they are losing judges.
Well, so this is one of the issues. You have to have witnesses of who are this person's family. Now, for most of our history, this wasn't a big issue because most people were born, lived, and died in the same town. Right? They didn't move around all that much because the land of their tribe was attached to that particular piece. And even once we were past the tribal affiliations and came back from Babylon all mixed together, we still, even to this day, most people, die within 100 miles of where they were born. In some countries, it's even smaller. Yeah. Jews are a little bit different, right? Because we have spent the last 2,000 years moving around. Although even there, it wasn't as much as people might think. 3-4 generations in one place, that's perfectly normal. But for most people in most parts of the world, people do not move around as much. Yes, this particular room, not exactly a good example. I'm from San Diego and you guys are from even further. So, Aaron, are you native Floridian?
Yeah.
Hey, we got one native Floridian. Hey, at least one. Okay. So yes, but most people, even in the old, and especially the old days, they wouldn't maybe go more than 20 miles from their home. Maybe they're going to go to, for Chag, they'll go to Jerusalem for the festivals, but they still come back home and live in the same town. So it wasn't as hard to find relatives as it is now. Plus, when you're in a small town like that, everybody's a relative because you've all been marrying each other for the last 200 years. So it's not hard to find a relative in your same town. Maybe you have to go back up to a third cousin, but you'll find someone.
So,
yes.
If the guy on the right dies before the father.
This guy?
Yes.
Yes.
So his daughters would split a third of his inheritance?
Third? They would split half of his property.
Right. But he would get a third.
Well, are you assuming that he has, or his father has or hasn't died? Right.
After he dies, after the grandfather, if he dies first, when the grandparents die.
B, C, D. Let's use that for generations.
If let's say C's already dead. Yes, if B's already dead, when A dies, do the females get anything? His daughters?
Okay, let's keep going. All right, let's keep going that because we need more text before we can answer that question. All right, so back on the page.
Are we in the general rule?
No, we are on the daughter.
Oh. The daughter precedes the brothers, and the daughter's offspring precedes the brothers.
Perfect. That's good. That's answering your question. The daughters precede the brothers. Now, what this is talking about is these two girls, they get to inherit from him before he would inherit from him. Right? Before B can take anything from C, if he's got daughters, C's property goes to them.
What about
if there was no C and no A, then C's property would go to B.
Right.
But because C has daughters, they get it. And if the daughters have daughters, or if the daughters have sons, and they're dead, C would go to his grandchildren.
So if C dies before A, then the daughters get their share of A's? His share of A's?
Yes, yeah, we're going to get that as well. So if C dies without having inherited from A, then when A dies, his daughters are C's progeny, are C's descendants. And so they would inherit C's portion, B wouldn't get it.
That's a general rule.
But now we're on brothers next.
Brothers precede the father's brothers, and brothers' offspring precedes the father's brothers.
All right, so the father's brothers in this room, or in this line, would mean if there was another brother over here, we'll call him A2, right? That was his brother, right? When A dies, the sons inherit before A2 inherits, right? And so too, the children of C and B would inherit before A2 would inherit. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Right? The general rule is if somebody exists lower on the tree, they get to inherit before we have to climb back up the tree to distribute. The inheritance is supposed to roll down to the next generation if you can find anybody down there. Good. Now the general rule.
The general rule, whoever has precedent in inheritance, his offspring also has precedent.
Right. So that we said, if the son precedes the daughter, then that means the son's children precedes the daughter. And if the daughter precedes the brother, then the daughter's children would precede the brother.
The daughter's children are before the mothers.
We'll go over here. Right. So we got daughter's children. What's that?
The daughter's children are before the mothers.
For the mothers.
Meaning in the C,
right?
The two daughters of C,
right?
Let's say that those two kids,
right?
If something happened, okay, C died, okay,
right,
and they have the heritage from A, can they jump the A go directly to the son's daughter because they are male?
I see what you're saying. No, it would technically go to the daughters first.
So go to the, no matter that is a woman,
yeah,
and she has males, still she receives the part.
Yes, because she's technically inheriting from him, who's inheriting from him. So it'll stop at the first inheritor that is still alive. Yeah, and then these two will inherit when she dies.
No, that's for sure.
Exactly.
I didn't know if they also maybe they can skip because the preference is always male.
No, it stops. Well, the preference isn't always male. Remember, we'll pick a daughter before we'll pick a brother.
Okay, but the closer, if you have the closer.
But that's closer, right? This is closer than this. So this girl takes precedent over her own boy.
Yeah.
Right. Because she is closer to A and C in the line of inheritance.
Yeah.
Okay, we're agreeing. And then last line.
The father has precedence over all his offspring.
Right. So that basically means that, as I sort of mentioned in passing, if C dies and he's got no one below him, that the father, if he's still alive, would inherit.
So,
If C died, right? Let's imagine there's no tree here, right? Just C all by himself gets hit by the bull, and A is still alive. A would inherit from C
before B.
before B would inherit. Exactly. Now, if A was dead, then B would inherit
So why A is closer than B?
because he's the father,
Brother is the brother.
and father is closer than brother by Jewish inheritance law. We can argue about why, but that is the halacha.
Why?
So yes, this is the mitzvah. We can ask God, but the way it was sort of explained to me is that everything the son has ultimately comes from the father. Right? That is the linchpin in the life. That a relationship between a child and their parents is a relationship that is not duplicatable, cannot be duplicated with any other relationship in a person's life. This is, if you'll give me a little moment, I'll step up on my soapbox. This is something that's actually really hard for a lot of people in the modern world to relate to, because a lot of people in the modern world have issues with their parents. And the relationship with their parents is not always an easy relationship. The relationship with their spouse is usually the primary relationship they have, right? Husband and wife together, 40, 50, 60 years. Usually they spend more time together than the parents and that person ever did. And they spend more time together when that person's an adult, and they spend more time together voluntarily as opposed to parent and child. But in Judaism, we still prize the parent-child relationship more than any other relationship, which is why the most classic example of this is when somebody is mourning, when you do kriya, when you tear your clothes. We tear over the heart for a parent. We tear over the right side for anyone else, including the spouse. We do
Also for our sons and daughters.
for anyone else. You can bury your wife of 60 years. The kriya is on the right. You can bury your child of three years old. It's not a measure of how much you're crying. It's a measure of what is the relationship bond. And Judaism believes that the strongest bond is between a child and their parent. That is supposed to be the model for everything. When we do Kaddish, when we do the rest of our mourning periods, right? It is 12 months for a parent. It is 30 days for everyone else as the required period.
Children also.
Children, spouse, brother, sister, all of those are 30 days.
But doesn't it strange that the parent you have stronger bond with the parent than with your own children? Because supposedly they come from you. You educate them.
Mm-hmm.
They are part of you, literally.
And that's why they look to you that way. But you look to your parents in that way. The way a parent looks to the child and the way the child looks to the parent is different. And that's something, again, that in the modern world is very tricky. I mean, I every time I hear a child call their parent by their first name, it's just, it just feels so wrong, because that's not the relationship. Judaism considers the relationship between parent and child to be a model for how a child learns to respect God. Not that a parent should ever act like I'm God, over the child. But the way a child can respect their parents is meant to be a template for how a person learns to respect something more powerful, something that has given them life, something that is deserving of respect. And God, of course, is the ultimate thing that gave us life and is deserving of respect. So the relationship going up, child to parent, is different than parent to child going down.
Right. That's the only relationship I think that's explicitly mentioned like that in the Ten Commandments, right?
Yes, absolutely.
But it didn't say that about any other relationship.
No, it doesn't. Not at all. Now, the other reason I think practically why the relationship for others is a little different is the parent relationship is the only relationship that we know there is a limit to how many you have. You will only ever have two parents. Done. Right? You may have a step parent, and that's great, and you can treat them with respect and love. I hope you do. But as far as Judaism requiring you to fulfill commandments, you've only got two to do that with. You may have, again, especially in the old world, you may have many different wives or husbands because people would get sick, people would die, people would get divorced. You may have many children, some of whom are going to die before you, right? That was normal in the world until 150 years ago. Most people buried at least one child, if not more. The idea that a parent should never outlive a child, that was what parents always did. That was normal for all of human history until the 20th century in this country, and different in other parts. So that meant that if you were to have the same degree of mourning, for example, for all of your children, for all of your spouses, for all of your siblings, you'd be mourning year after year after year after year, and you would never not be mourning, because somebody would die in your household at least once a year almost. But for parents, it's only going to be 2 that are going to be on the schedule. So at most, you only have those 2 years that you're spending mourning. Now, again, doesn't mean that we don't mourn for other people. Certainly, you can take on additional mournings. The rabbis talk in Moed Katan about delaying a remarriage, long enough after the first person has died, even if the requirements of mourning are not as long. There are lots of other rules to how this process works. But as far as the unique and powerful relationship goes, parent to child is the template that the rabbis and the Torah seem to really highlight. Well, there is something to be said historically for the way we had multi-generational families and multi-generational households. For me, the hardest part when I became a rabbi and left home was that I left all my family behind. And that's very, very difficult. But historically now, a lot of people do that. Since the mobility of the 20th century and the 21st, although mobility is tapering off, lots of people left their family behind. And that meant that you were a new parent, that you were new in your career, and you did not have a support structure around you. Again, that also has to go with the fact that a lot of people don't respect their parents, and so they don't look to their parents for help. They don't look to their parents for advice. They don't look to the parents for guidance. And that brings its own other problems with it.
Because your parents become to be friends.
Become the friends, or even to strangers, right? A lot of kids, as they grow up, just move further and further away from their parents rather than reviewing their relationship. Now, a lot of parents, don't want to do too much psychology tonight, a lot of parents don't make it easy for the child to become an adult with an adult relationship to their parents. A lot of parents try to trap their child as a child and don't realize, yes, you still will get respect and love from your child even when they're an adult, but the relationship's going to look different when they're 22 than when they were 12. I don't need names. So that you're thinking out loud, but so that is still an issue, and that definitely doesn't help the relationship between a lot of parents and children. But you asked me why, and
Thank you.
there you go.
No, I like it. I like that the answer of, because whatever we are is thanks to them. So that's why we have the biggest mountain.
Mhm.
I like that.
Right.
I think.
And again, it's meant to be a mirror for also how we thank God. Because if a person can't thank their parents, how can they learn to thank God?
Also, as Aaron says in the Ten Commandments,
Mm-hmm.
also it's the only relationship, and also we have only 2 parents.
Exactly right.
Like only 3 together. I like the explanation. Thank you.
Good question. All right. Chapter 8, Mishnah 3.
The daughters of
Selofechad.
Zelophehad took 3 portions of the inhabitants of the land of the portion of their father who was of them that came out of Egypt, and his portion among his brothers from the property of Ephraim,
Right, which was Zelophehad's father.
Zelophehad, and in that he was the firstborn, he took a double portion.
Okay.
So you thought we were 5 daughters.
Yes. So let me explain.
Okay.
This is a little complicated, which is why it explains a lot of stuff, but you're going to have to hold on. Do I need to do, I think I can modify my thing here. We'll go to it like that. Okay. And 5. All right. So he is now Z for Zelophehad, and he is now Hefer. So we're just going to give him an H because it's easier. I guess we could put an H with the dot under it if we want to be very pedantic. Okay, so what happens here? We're in the book of Bamidbar, the book of Numbers, and Zelophehad dies. Now, theoretically, we believe from the Midrash that he was the wood gatherer who was out on Shabbat and got gathering the wood, and he was executed. But we don't need to go into too much debate about that. So Zelophehad dies. Now, when he dies, his daughters, he has no sons, right? His daughters will inherit. The question is, what will they inherit? So to get that, we have to unpack what the Mishnah is talking about here. And the Mishnah is based off the idea that the land of Israel was apportioned before the Israelites got there. Not the actual piece of dirt, but who would get dirt was already apportioned. And it was apportioned according to who was alive when we left Egypt. So everybody who left Egypt got a title to, you will get a piece of Israel. Now, if you were born during the 40 years, you would get your piece by inheriting from your parents. We with me so far? Okay. The girls, because they were girls, they were not given a piece of Israel when we left Egypt, even though they were alive. So when their father dies, they receive his portion. You with me so far? So that's one portion that they get of the land of Israel. Hefer also dies, because remember, everybody who was over the age of 20 is going to die before we get to the land of Israel.
And they don't receive also part of Hefer.
Exactly right, because remember, the daughters of a man inherit from the father before the brothers would inherit. The trick is, Zlofachad was the firstborn of Hefer. Because he was the firstborn, he gets 2 portions of the land of Israel. So that means the double portion, Hefer had, gets 2 portions over here. Zlofachad has 1 of his own. Therefore, the daughters get 3 portions. But each one of them gets 1/5 of that portion. Right? So they each have 1/5 of the 3 portions that their family, this part of the family, would get when they get to the land of Israel.
Around 0.6.
Around 0.6, okay.
Yeah.
Rabbi, would it be 1 2/3 portion? Because you gave the 1/2 portions, but shouldn't that be 2/3? How does the guy on the first guy on the right get 2 portions? 3.
So he gets 2 out of the
3.
he gets 2 out of the portion that Hefer was going to have.
Right.
Right. So yes, you're right. It's less than a full portion, right? Because the 1 portion would have come. But the Mishnah's language is 2 portions plus 1 portion equals 3 portion. Yeah. The daughters of Zlofachad took 3 portions of the inheritance.
How come what's he doesn't get a portion?
Zlofachad?
Yeah.
He did. That's the one.
But how come his portion is the same as his father's?
So like I said, that's why, yes, technically his father was getting 1 portion,
Right.
and Zlofachad was getting 1 portion. And you're right. Zlofachad, we would technically say, got 2/3 because he got the double portion of the 3 portions that were between him and his brothers. Right. But the problem with doing that is the language of the Mishnah talks about 3 portions. So the 3 portions were probably not equal in size, but they are still called 3 portions. That's why I left my math the way I did. So everyone follow how that logic works? So when Hefer dies, the daughters also inherit in the place of Zlofachad because he's already dead. And then they go on and they marry other nice people and they get to settle in the land of Israel.
Lucky ones.
Lucky ones, their father died?
No, lucky one, the husbands.
Oh,
they
well,
receive a lot of land.
but this is a fairly normal process, right? It wouldn't be that unusual to have daughters instead of sons surviving by the time of the death of the parent. So those daughters are always going to have bonus land coming to another member of the tribe. That's not that unusual.
Yeah, his son, they wouldn't have any land though.
Yes, if there had been 1 boy, right? If hypothetically there had been 1, my pen is dying. If there had been 1 boy over here,
Right.
then he would have gotten all of that.
So that would mean it's no longer normal though. Would it for a daughter to inherit land? That's got to be abnormal, right?
Well, normal doesn't mean it's the most usual thing to happen.
Oh.
Normal means it's not surprising when it happens. right? So that's what I mean when I say normal. I mean, it's something that is unsurprising,
But if he had a boy and he received all the land,
right?
he needed to support the sisters until
Absolutely.
they get married.
Absolutely. That's what we learned in Bava Batra earlier. Yes, exactly. Okay, onward.
He will not be very happy.
Why?
Hey, 5 daughters, it's a lot of food.
So
And also he need to give the dogs.
So when we get to chapter 9 and we start having houses fall on people, then we'll really begin to see how self-interested and greedy people can behave. So yes, it's not nice to dwell on, but the rabbis had to deal with the real world. People want as much as they can get.
Yeah.
And the halakha is designed to try and prevent it from being damaging. So yes, he would want more for himself, but he's got 5 sisters. He has to take care of them and their needs because they're his sisters. And the land that he has is not theirs to inherit, but it is theirs to enjoy.
But now that he's the boss of the family,
Right.
Okay, he can decide in order to rid out of the sisters and not pay so much, marry all of them as fast as possible.
But they still have to consent. He can't marry them against their will. That's only in Fiddler on the Roof.
Yeah.
Right. So he can arrange for marriages for them, but if they say no, then he's stuck. Because you can't force a woman to marry against her will. You can't force a man to marry against his will either. Okay. 8-4. Yerach. Yep.
The son and the daughter are alike concerning the inheritance, save that the firstborn son takes a double portion of the father's property, but he does not take a double portion of the mother's property.
Okay, so it's very important to understand that this Mishnah is missing a few important words. The son and daughter are alike if there is only one or the other alive at the time. Right? The son and the daughter are not treated the same if they're both alive. Because if they're both alive, only the son inherits and the daughter doesn't. But the way the son inherits is the same as the way a daughter inherits. Right? But again, only if one or the other of them is alive at the time. It's the part that's really confusing when I first read this Mishnah. It's like, wait, what? No, we just got finished doing, 3 Mishnayot telling me that they're different, and now you tell me they're the same? It's saying that the way they inherit is the same, except the son, the firstborn son, gets the double portion, but the firstborn daughter does not.
Yeah.
Right? The daughters divide equally, but the son does get a double portion. Why? Because the Torah actually says the firstborn son gets it. It doesn't say the daughter would.
The daughter, if she doesn't have any brothers.
Yes.
Okay.
Then she inherits, and she inherits the same way the boys do, except she doesn't get double portion.
If she has, like in this example, a sister.
Yeah.
And not any brother.
Yeah. If she's all by herself, then she'll inherit the whole thing.
No, I mean if he has a brother, the brother is supposed to take everything.
No. Who has a brother? I mean over here?
No, they are.
Here.
Yeah.
Yeah. If there's a boy down here, then they don't inherit. They're supported by the estate, they're all of that, but they don't inherit. Exactly. So this is an either-or situation for our first sentence.
And why the daughter cannot receive the firstborn daughter?
Because Torah doesn't say she does. The Torah specifically says the firstborn receives a double portion. The Torah does not specifically say the firstborn daughter receives the double portion.
But I don't remember, but when they said the firstborn is in Sahar, like
Of course, it's the Bachor. Right? It's literally written as a masculine noun.
yeah, but the masculine is a generic form also.
The masculine would be a generic form if it wasn't actually being used to describe someone specifically that is being determined as a male in every other part of inheritance law. Right? The firstborn is always masculine because the masculine firstborn was the one that inherited double. That was the one who had the status of being firstborn. We never hear about a firstborn daughter having any special status at all. And the difficulty with saying the firstborn daughter should get one just like the brother would be, yeah, but the other 4 daughters, in this particular case, you'd be ripping them off. Why does she get extra when the Torah didn't say she gets extra? The only reason the firstborn son gets extra is because the Torah specifically said it, because otherwise we wouldn't be allowed to touch the money that should be going to the other boys.
Just a curiosity, because it's related with only daughters and someone that has land and know a lot of Torah.
Right?
When Rashi passed away, what happened? He divide in equally part with the daughters?
So I don't know exactly what happened when Rashi passed, but we are going to get to what became common. So this is the law if nothing else is done. But there are ways for people to leave money to whomever they want.
And what happened?
But this is the default.
And what happened if, for example, you have 5 daughters, but 2 of them are married and 1 is married, okay, has a husband? That one has priority?
That they're still so.
Or is-
You know what? I have to go double check that, because I mean, in the old days when it came to tribes, that would be an issue. If they were married outside the tribe, what would happen? I have to double check that. What happens if the daughters are already married? So that's a good question.
Wasn't the reason that the firstborn got a double portion was to prevent too much dilution of family wealth?
That's a sociological, economic reason, but the Torah doesn't tell us exactly that.
Right. I was gonna say they would not have that problem with daughters though, because I thought the daughters did not inherit to pass down wealth. They just didn't.
No, the daughters will give to their heirs
Right.
whatever they have inherited. Okay, but we need to keep moving because some of the questions you're bringing up are going to be dealt with in the next Mishnah. So we are on the long Mishnah for Natan.
Did I finish?
Oh, no, you didn't finish. I'm sorry. You're right. The daughter receives maintenance. Sorry, one more sentence.
And the daughters receive maintenance from the father's property, but not from the mother's property.
Right? Because they don't inherit from their mother. That means that their maintenance doesn't come from their mother either. Now, we're going to see, in case you're wondering, well, couldn't the mother give a gift to their daughters? Yeah, we're getting to that. But as far as the default inheritance path goes, the daughters would not have been given maintenance out of their mother's property.
So if in this case, who passed away is not the father, it's the mother.
Well, the father also has to be dead.
Yeah.
Because otherwise the father would inherit from the mother.
Yes, the father is dead. The mother has her property
Right?
from previous marriage or whatever, or
Right.
from the previous father or something like that. And they have only 5 daughters. The mom cannot pass the property to the daughters.
It doesn't. Let me redo your question.
Yeah.
Does the property from the mother automatically go to the daughters? And the answer is no. Can she give it to them in her own way? Now we're in Mishnah 5.
So the Beit Din will not say if there's nothing special, okay, automatically they are
No.
daughters.
No.
They will need to go on the other.
They would go
branches
back
first.
through the mother's branches. They would go through the mother's branches.
Yeah, no.
But remember, the girls would have already inherited from their father. So it's not like they have nothing.
Yeah.
Okay. 8-5. The longish one.
You always get the big one.
Yeah. You just, I was going to say, you should sit over there. Yeah, exactly.
One who says, so and so my firstborn son shall not take a double portion. So and so my son shall not inherit with his brothers. He has said nothing, for he has made a condition against what is written in Torah.
All right. So let's imagine that I am, we need to get back to sons here for the moment. Erase some of these extra lines. Let's imagine that I've got 3 sons, and we'll just put a daughter in here because that'll come up later. And this is 1, 2, 3, right? And I don't like my number 1 son. And so I say my number 1 son will not get a double portion. And then I die, and the Beit Din comes, and the other brothers say, well, you know, our dad said he doesn't get a double portion. The Beit Din will say he said nothing and still give him a double portion. Because the Torah says he gets a double portion.
Yeah, but he can write in a
We're not there yet. We're not there. Right, we're not there yet. We're talking about default. We're talking about default. Right? We gotta one step at a time. Right. So for default, if I say he doesn't get a double portion, or if I say, you know what, I never liked the middle one. I don't like number 2. He doesn't get anything. And then I die, he still gets the inheritance. Right? because what I said goes against the Torah. It's just like if I say, I want number 2 to kill number 1. That's not legal just because I said it, because it goes against the Torah, right? And number 2 doesn't have to do it. And if he did do it, he wouldn't say, well, my dad told me to, it's okay. No, you're not allowed to give orders that go against the Torah. So that's the basic default case. However, and I'm looking forward to how your translation handles this.
One could divide his assets among his sons orally and give more to one and less to another, or make the firstborn equal to them. His words are valid.
All right, let's deal with that.
Witnesses.
Yeah.
There must be witnesses that they are not the sons.
Yeah, you can't get the other brothers together and say, no, dad said this.
Yeah.
Right, but this is what would we call this at the moment? There's a term for this, like making a trust for the children. You're taking the money and you are officially giving it to them before you die. And we're going to talk about you're giving it to them, but not 100%. But basically, you are dividing it up while you're alive. And the Torah doesn't say you can't make gifts. Of course you can make gifts, right? If I want to give my cup to some stranger, I can give my cup to some stranger. I don't have to worry. My son can't say, but Dad, I was going to inherit that cup, right? No. If I'm alive, I can give stuff to whoever I want, more or less, we're going to see. So therefore, if I'm alive and I want to say all my sons inherit equally, that's fine. I'm allowed to do that. If I want to say this one gets more than the other one, I'm allowed to do that, as long as I'm saying it before I'm alive and with the next important condition.
But if he said, as an inheritance, he has said nothing.
Right, but if I say it's for an inheritance, I've said the magic word. Inheritance is handled by the Torah. If you say inheritance, it has to be an inheritance. It can't be while you're alive. It means when you're dead, and when you're dead, it has to go according to Torah law.
And what happens if you do this gift when you are in the bed a few minutes before you pass away?
We'll get to deathbed.
Can
Deathbed is covered, but yes, basically yes.
It's still kosher, he can do it.
We will eventually get to deathbeds, but yes, it's still kosher. As long as there is proper witnessing and the person was not being coerced and there weren't any other issues, yes. You want to read exciting drama? Read some of the Sheilot and Shuvot and stories of the Beit Din, some of the writings of the rabbis who lived during the Middle Ages. Inheritance fights were always a nightmare, because you'd have somebody say, but Dad said this before these witnesses, and someone else would say, but Dad said this before these witnesses, and they would be arguing back and forth about who gave what to whom and what the original kids were supposed to get and the new kids, especially if it was like new kids from a new wife and then the old wife's kid. Oh, it's like so much drama. This was real law and real problems all the time, because you know what? People want money. I mean, nowadays, yeah, most of us are a little comfortable and we're not going to starve, but even still, people want more. It's just unfortunately the way most people look at money. So this would often cause big problems, and deathbed issues were all over the place. Okay, so if it was written down, or
if he wrote either at the beginning or in the middle or at the end as a gift, his words are valid.
Right? There's no special formula. As long as he said, 10 to number 1, 20 to number 2, 30 to number 3 as a gift, it's fine. Or if he said as a gift, 10 to number 1, 20 to
when he's still alive.
Yeah.
Or you can, or it's like a contract in case that I will when he's really dead.
So this is closer to what we would now call a will. Yes, but the way we're going to see the way it happens is once you have made this declaration, there are limits then to what you can do with the property, because it's kind of owned by the people who are inheriting, kind of, but we're not there yet. We'll get to that wrinkle in a bit. Yes.
Could because like you said, to avoid those limitations on what you could do with the property,
Right.
Could he say, I will give you whatever $100 if you whatever bury me, or if you say cottage for me when I'm dead? That way, the interest will not kick in until after he passes.
So we'll come to the issue of when does this take effect and what limits are there. But I do want to point out that it would be very difficult to say, I'll give you 100 if you do something for me when I'm dead, because I won't be there to make sure you do it.
But the court will be able to.
Then you would have to give it to the court, and the court would be the one who would be allocating it. Because you can't expect the court to adjudicate whether the person's doing it after the fact. You'd have to make the person do it before the fact, and then the court would have to be the trustee.
But you need to give the will to someone, because if you put the will in the house and in the will there's gift for someone, maybe the other son or daughter make disappear the will.
Have you been reading medieval papers? Of course, these were issues. Someone would say there was a will and the will said this, and it was witnessed by these people. You'd have to bring those people. But someone else would say, yeah, but Dad told me that will wasn't valid anymore, and these two witnesses were there for that. So all the drama you can imagine from any soap opera happened.
So they don't give the local baby the will to protect when they are old in order to be sure.
Sometimes yes. Sometimes yes. Sometimes they would leave it with the rabbi, right? But then you had different issues of what document was dated when. Right? Maybe the guy had a fight with the rabbi. Maybe the guy left something in the will that was good for the rabbi, but the kids don't like that rabbi. And the kids say, no, Dad changed his mind. And here we have different witnesses. Right? So all of this is real life. There's no simple solution to any of this, because when money's involved, people will do just about anything to try and get it.
So you had a question.
That
was the question. Yeah. About was there a way to do it more that it would only kick in after the fact and conditional? But let's deal with the after the fact a little bit later. But conditional wills were tricky.
Right, but that technically wasn't a will though, because that was
exactly right. Well, that's why the term will in modern English is a little different than what we're talking about here, because it isn't actually a will in the way we think of a will. It was a gift, but it was a gift that was handled in a unique way, different than here, have a pen.
Yeah, I mean, we're calling this not a gift, but we're calling it payment.
Which is a whole different thing. Then it becomes a question of a creditor, that, someone owes you money for a debt that you are performing.
They could collect from an estate a debtor.
You can collect from an estate, but then you have to prove that you have the right to collect from the estate, but it's the estate that's holding it, not you. And that would be the issue. Right? Because if you're the child and you inherit, you now own the property. Right? There's not an estate at that point. The estate has been dissolved and it became yours.
The estate dissolves upon your passing.
Upon the passing, although they do have to, as we point out, navigate the complicated issue of how to dispose of the estate. But the estate becomes the property of the rightful heirs. That's the wrong word. The rightful recipients upon your death.
So you have to be a creditor before they die. You can't be a creditor after.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. The idea that, and like in modern American law, where you'll have somebody who is like a lawyer for the estate and they're a creditor against the estate, that doesn't happen. Right? You can be paid in advance, or you can be given a credit by the deceased that you will be the lawyer for my estate, and therefore when you do my job, you get to have a debt from the estate. But you can't start that relationship with the estate once the person's dead. You can start it on behalf of the children of the estate, but then they owe you the money, not the estate. Okay, a little bit more, because I want to finish up 8.5 before we go home. If a man said, so-and-so shall inherit,
So-and-so shall inherit me in a situation where there is a daughter. My daughter shall inherit.
Or my daughter shall inherit. Right.
Me in a situation where there is a son. He has said nothing, for he has made a condition against what is written in the Torah.
All right, so far it actually sounds very familiar. If I've got kids and I say Mr. Smith is going to inherit from me, I didn't say anything legally important, because Mr. Smith can't inherit from me while my kids are still alive.
But can you say that make a gift
Absolutely.
to my daughter when you have a son?
No, you can't do that either, right? You can't inherit. You can't say my daughter will inherit.
No, I give to my daughter as a gift all that land.
Okay, so yes, that you can do. Right? You can give your money to whoever. We can give your money to, a stranger.
Including the deathbed and everything, and the son cannot do anything.
Yep.
So if the daughter that usually were in charge of the house, caring for the sick and everything, can manipulate the situation and can take everything and have witnesses say, hey, all right, here, there's a gift, okay,
Yes.
bye-bye.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I don't know why you're surprised by this.
No,
Right, so the rabbis were, so there's two main issues here, right? One on the side of inheritance and one on the side of a gift, right? And the rabbis believe that inheritance has to follow what the Torah says inheritance is. If you die, it goes to whoever is supposed to inherit. You don't get to play with that. But on the other hand, while you're alive, it's your money. It's your property. You can do whatever you like with it. Even if it means when you die, the inheritance will not be what people think it should be, right? I can give away all my money to somebody I met at the bus, and that's perfectly fine while I'm alive, right? I'm not saying my family would be happy with me, but I have the legal right because it's my property, and the rabbis do not want to tell a person what they can and can't do with their property if it's their legal right. But if I die and I leave a piece of paper that says I want stranger from the bus to inherit me, then that's invalid because they cannot inherit as long as I have children. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
I had a question. Okay. So a lot of these gifts would look something like a ketubah, just not mandatory, then, right?
Yes. It was, I'm signing over this property, this amount to whomever. Exactly.
Yeah, like a contract.
It's like a contract. We're going to get to, well, not tonight. We're going to get to what happens to the property in the meantime between when you make the assignment and when you die. But that, may have been hours, that may have been months, that may have been longer. But we'll talk about that when we get a little further
Can
in.
you find, Rabbi, an example of a contract, historical contract?
I haven't looked at one recently. I mean, we did look at some of these in rabbinic, but it was a long time ago now.
Wouldn't it look like a ketubah, though?
I mean, the language is very, so-and-so says that, he gives this to this son, he gives this to this son. I mean, that's what the language is written. Like, I'd have to go and look up. But I wonder if Sefaria has examples of that. I'll take a look and see. Remind me. Okay, but let's finish up this Mishnah.
Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka says, if he spoke concerning one who is qualified to inherit him, his word are valid. And if about one who is not qualified to inherit him, his word are not valid.
Okay, so what he is trying to add here, and by the way, the halakha does follow him. So I know you're going to ask me. What he's trying to add here is he can make adjustments to inheritance issues, which is basically like gifting them, but only in the category of people that could inherit.
Like if he has 3 sons.
Then he can adjust that, or son and a daughter, right? Because they are technically valid people to inherit. But a stranger, no. If he has a son.
So if he has 3 sons,
Mm-hmm.
can take part of the double from the first son and give to the others?
Yes, he can manipulate it even with the inheritance language as long as he's staying within the bubble of the people. But it's felt to be more like a gift rather than an inheritance. So he's being a little bit more lenient in the wording that a person can use, but only within the category of acceptable errors from this issue.
How's that not contrary to the Torah, though?
Well, because what's happening here is that he is really just actually gifting it in the language of inheritance, because these people are kind of heirs. So yes, it is okay to use that language. It is a concession to the way people interact.
Well, why can you only give to heirs, not to anybody else?
Well, because they were considered to be within the range of acceptable people from which you might want to do these sorts of things, and to therefore not be an unexpected wrench in the normal process. That's the basic idea. As we're going to see, yes, it is the next section. A person might want to do this for a couple reasons.
One who assigned his assets to others and left out his sons, what he did is done.
Right? So if I want to say, I'm giving everything to Mr. Smith and my sons get nothing, What I did, I did. It is legally valid. However,
But the spirit of the sage finds no pleasure in him.
Right.
So who cares about the spirit? Doesn't want to.
who cares, right? Of course we care. Is it right? Is it right? Right. But this last, we're not done yet. But this last paragraph is arguing about, is it right for a parent to not let their children inherit?
No, very bad.
Well, but that a lot of people would disagree, like Shimon ben Gamliel. Read the next paragraph, next line.
Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says, if he did not have worthy son, it's remembered to his credit.
And he says, wait a minute. Imagine he has 3 boys, and one of them is a gambler, one of them is a murderer, and one of them is something else. Or maybe not proven murderer, but a drunkard, and one of the other one just, visits women. Really? He should let his money go to these 3 boys? Right? No, if he says, I'm skipping my boys and I'm giving everything to Mr. Smith, then we should say, good job, good idea.
Yeah, but what is the masse, or what happened what was the previous one? I can't see. The one that the spirit will not be happy, the spirit of the sages. But still, okay, in the bottom line, and at the end of the day, the strange have all the money.
Right.
And okay, the spirit, they are very upset, the sages, but they cannot do anything. They cannot reverse.
Correct, they
process.
cannot
So,
reverse it. But,
Okay, keep being upset. That's okay.
So it may surprise you, but a lot of being a rabbi has to do with trying to persuade people to do things a certain way. We have some tools of law to fix things, but a lot of what a rabbi does is try to persuade a person to behave rightly, because there are ways to be a legal person without being a nice person, to follow the law, but still not be a nice person. And much of what the rabbis tried to do was to say, you can be better than what you can get away with. And so that's their impetus here. But Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel raises a very interesting question of, is it ever appropriate for a parent to cut out the children from their inheritance? Is there ever a time when we would even say, good choice for cutting them out?
And what is the answer?
So what is the answer in the Gemara?
Yeah.
The first opinion, that you never cut them out. That you never cut them out. That the correct way to behave is to allow your children to inherit.
Yeah, because theologically, problematically, or you give the opportunity to what? Someone could be a very bad person, but maybe in the last minute or later in life they make tshuva. So you don't want to close the door of tshuva. It's a very important theological aspect.
Right. So
I completely agree with the halakha.
hey, that's a first.
The example would be if one's rich and one's disabled.
So again, the deservedness of the inheritance
Right.
is not really the question.
It's not the deserved, it's the need. So the rich one.
Even the need. How do you know the rich one won't break his back next week and his children will become orphans? Right? How do you know that the poor one won't waste it on something else? Right? You don't know what will happen tomorrow.
We can take care of the poor and not wasting it through a trust.
You could, or you could raise your 2 sons so that the one who is rich will know that he always has an obligation to take care of his brother if his brother is in need. Right? That is what a family is supposed to do. Tzedakah begins at home.
Sure.
Before it moves out to a stranger. If you have a relative that is in desperate need, you don't give money to somebody on the street corner. You give money to your relative, and that's tzedakah, right? So that and the rabbis believe that is the first level of tzedakah, is for your family first, if your family is in need. So the idea that you would means test your inheritance is not really something the rabbis agreed with. They said your inheritance should go with, yes, there is the flexibility for your wishes because it is your money, but the inheritance should go to your children. Even if they're not perfect, even if you don't think they all need it equally, you should teach them and you should guide them while you're alive to try and be good to one another and to use the money wisely and to not be bad people. But ultimately it is theirs because they came from you.
So it's okay to give part, but not everything.
Yes. Now,
Part is okay.
So
if he can give a part to the strange.
So again, as one,
Still
yes, you can
giving
still give
something
some,
to
absolutely. And just to use a little bit more of the drasha on this, this is what God puts up with every day. Right? God has let us inherit this whole earth and all of this world. Does that mean we always use it right? No, it doesn't. Does that mean that we always treat each other the way we should? Does that mean that God says the rich people, you shouldn't get as much free oxygen as the poor person? The rich people shouldn't get as much pleasure from food as the poor person. No, God gives the gifts of life to everybody, and he gives them more or less equally. Some people have gotten more, some people have less, some people deserve them more, some people deserve them less. And we do have an obligation to fix that according to the Torah. And we have an obligation to fix ourselves according to the Torah. But thank God our Father doesn't cut us off. Because if our Father said, no one gets to inherit anything else anymore, we'd be dead tomorrow. And our entire world would be gone. So if God can be patient with us, we can be patient with our families. We'll leave it there for tonight.